Hello, who is online? Say hello. Hi, Gustavo. Good to see you. Good to see you, Gustavo. Gustavo, I'm going to help you with the United States history. And the assignments a little bit later. Give me a second. Wait for a few people to come on. Just give people just a few minutes to come on. And we will begin. Good to see you, though. I'm just looking for a picture of something to show you. Aha, there it is. Found it. Hi, Jason. Hi, Lily. All right, guys. Are we ready to begin? So today, we are going to finish chapter 4. And I will show you where the journal entries are. Okay, to get to chapter 4, let me share my screen so that you can see what I'm looking at. Hello, Sophia. Good to see you. I'm going to make this small here. Hi. Oops, did I close everything? No mistake. All right. So, guys, we are on chapter 4. Remember that you want to open your Blackboard so that we can do the assignments as we work, right? Give me a second because I opened the wrong one. We are actually past this. We are on unit 3. We're moving very fast. But guys, you have to do your assignments, and I will show you something and a little bit to show you what assignments you have to do because you are a little behind. So after we finish chapter 4, we are going to work on assignments. Now remember what I told you. You should have a page open like this so that when you find a question, an answer to a question, you can answer it right away. Right? How did the experience of immigrants to the United States compare for Chinese and Europeans? How do you think life in the big city was different from life in the small farm? So these questions we already have the answers for. If you don't remember, you can watch the other video. We did the political machines with all the corruption. We talked about social Darwinism, so you should have the answer for that. We talked about why artists wanted to depict America more realistically in their books. And we are on question number 6, which we're going to look at today about civil service reform. And what else do we need to get from here? The charts, okay? Now, chapter 4, we did both of these charts together, okay? So then, again, I will explain once more how to send those charts. I suggest that you write your own notes, and then you can take a picture of those notes, email it to yourself so that you have an email. So you have a picture like this, and then you would download it, save it on your computer. Okay. And then what can you do? You go to your journal section. Guys, I don't have this on my Blackboard, so I can't show you. Okay. And then when you go to the journal section, you will be able to upload your answers, copy and paste your answers. But then when you scroll down, okay, scroll means to do this, scroll down. Oh, actually here, this is pretty good. So you're going to click here, create journal entry, and then you can post your stuff. But then you will have to scroll down, and you're going to see that there's going to be a little paper clip. This is a paper clip. A paper clip is this. It's going to be a little paper clip where you click on it, and it's going to say, hey, do you want to add more files? Okay. And when you add more files, that's when you can browse your computer, okay, and just send in your notebook entries, which are these questions right here, required notes, or your own notes, which can be in Word. Okay, make sure it's Word or PDF. Okay, make sure it's Word or PDF. And then that's it. When you're done, you submit. Okay. If you're taking a picture, you can transfer it to PDF by just going on Google, and then usually pictures are JPEG, okay, to PDF. If you click on any site, you should be able to find a cool PDF converter, and then you get your file, put it on here, and it'll download onto your computer as a PDF. Is everybody cool with that? Okay. Hey, it's Gabriel. It's Pantufi. How are you? It's little Mateus. How are you, Mateus? It's Mayara. Hello, Mayara. Good to see you guys. Okay. It's very good to see you. If you have any questions while I'm teaching, you can write it in the text box. There's a little bit of a delay. So sometimes if I say something, you're only going to hear it 30 seconds later. So what do? Write your answer if I ask you a question, or write the question that you have, and I will look at it, okay? Because I'll be flipping back and forth. If it's something that's like an emergency, you can either write to me on WhatsApp, because I have my computer, I have my cell phone on, or you can send me a message on Skype. Okay? So good to see everybody. I hope you're all okay. I miss you guys. So let's finish chapter 4. We were talking about urbanization in America. And look at that. So remember, I told you to keep a page open right there. Well, why was civil service reform needed? And by the way, guys, before we go on, super important is your assignments, guys. This is US history. Whoops, that's not US history that I wanted to see. But okay, it's gonna take me a second to. Oh, there it is. Let me close this one. This one doesn't look good. So that's US government. Where's US history? I just had it open a second ago. I think I have to go back. Economics, US history. So, guys, look at all of these assignments that you have. Okay. It's a lot. If you want me to send this to you, I can, so that you can keep a check of what you have to do. But a lot of these are these quizzes. You have to do these quizzes. Okay. And then for unit 1, there was the short answers. We did this in class, guys. So you should send this. Okay. You should send this. And you should send this with the analyze the historic documents, which I will talk to you about today. Okay. Now, unit 2, we did this online, right? Look, short answers and the discussion, okay? Assignment 2.5 in your notebooks. But then you have all these quizzes to do here in the middle. You have to do these quizzes. So we're past this. If you didn't do any of this or didn't send it, you're going to be so behind, because look where we are now. We are all the way over here, guys. Okay, remember, discussion question is when they have a question and then you kind of reply to each other. Okay, those are the discussions. But we are all the way down in I'm sorry, we are unit 3, so we are right here. So if you don't do this now, you're going to be very, very, very behind. Okay, so that's where we are right now. We're doing this right here. And remember that the discussion is when you write something there about somebody else's work. Does that make sense? It looks scary because it's so many assignments, but if you do them while we are in the class, it's not going to be so much. Yes, Livia, I will send that to everybody. How about that? This way it'll be easier. So then you can keep a check of what you have to do. All right? Hello, Rodrigo. I think I said hello to Gabriel. Okay? So that's that. So let's move ahead. Civil service reform. So we have that question, right? And there it is again. Why was civil service reform needed? Civil service are people that work for the government. I know here in Brazil, people have a lot of fights with the civil servants too, because some people say, hey, they have this job and they have a guaranteed salary and they don't always have to do a lot of work. So a lot of times can be corrupt. Now, of course, that doesn't mean every civil servant is corrupt. But when you have a situation like this, it's easier to have corruption. And but in the 1880s, America had this problem. Okay, a lot of federal government, a lot of jobs in the federal government were subject to the spoil system. What is the spoil system? Is when a president won, he could put anybody that he wanted in any job. Okay? And that means he can fire people from before and put new people on. This is still happening today, and it's not a problem. It happens in America, it happens in Brazil. It's just the way that it happens. But it also means that people would try to stay loyal to their bosses, which would be the president and people higher up, so that they wouldn't lose their job. So this can become a little bit of corruption, right? Because if I'm the one that has the power to give you the job, then you're going to do whatever I say to keep your job, right? Because you need to be very, very, very loyal to me. So, because of this corruption, we needed civil service reform. And it begins here with Rutherford Hayes, who was president. He tried to end this idea of patronage by firing officials who had been given their jobs because of their support of the party, and he replaced them with a lot of reformers. And this split the Republican Party. There were those that supported patronage, which were the Stuarts, and the half-breeds who backed reform. So if you want to put that in your notes, we have the Stuarts and the half-breeds. So remember what I said about taking notes. You can sometimes copy, and you can go here. Where is our page? It's right there. So then I can put here my notes, chapter 4. And I can copy and paste, but then later write it in your own words, right? This is just so I don't take, forever. Maybe you don't type very fast, so it doesn't take a very long time for you to type as I'm speaking, right? So you need to find quick ways to write your notes. And this is important, guys, for when you get to university and later, because there the teacher just talks, and you have to just take notes as quickly as you can. And sometimes you have to just write a page and say, read page 5 again, okay, after you're home, because maybe you didn't understand it, but the teacher has to continue. So you can't stop the whole class just because you didn't understand one thing, and you have to read it later. So there was this fight with patronage, and a few months later, President Garfield was assassinated because he did not have a government job. And this made the public be really against the spoils system. So this president's name was Garfield, like the cat. Okay, so remember Garfield the cat assassinated. If this comes up on your test. So then Congress passed this act, the Pendleton Act, requiring that you have to take an exam in order to get a government job. So that people got government jobs based on their skills and qualifications and not their affiliations. Okay? So this is the Pendleton Act. I think that's a good thing to put in my notes. As now people got government, this is the abbreviation for government jobs based on their skills and not patronage, okay? Based on their skills or qualifications. And I believe this kind of answers question number 6, okay? If you're paying attention right now, you'll see that we just read the answer to number 6, okay? So now you have to pay attention to find out about farmers. Hi, Victor. I hope you got my email and figured out how to send the assignments through Blackboard. Okay? Is everybody with me? By the way, I'm here, guys. I put my little icon there, but I am here. Let me say hello to you guys. Hello. Hello, hello, hello. But I prefer this because it's bigger. What questions are that? We just read what is the answer to question number 6. Okay, because remember, as we're doing the unit, let's try to answer this. So then when we finish the unit, you can send it. You can send your notebook. You can send your notes, or you can do these notes, and boom, we're finished. Okay, so that we can not be behind, because look, guys, we are very behind. This is Jaza made this right here. This shows what everybody handed in. Okay, so lesson 1. Okay, it's not bad, but nobody did any of the quizzes except for Rodrigo and Sumaya. But then when we get to lesson 2, lesson 3, which by the way, it's chapters, okay? Chapter 3, chapter 4, where is the work? Nobody is doing any work. So you have to do the work and do it. Let's do it together while we are studying, so that it doesn't become accumulated, okay? You do not want to accumulate work. It is a lot. Okay? It is a lot. Thank you, Mateus. Thank you, Mateus. Okay. So let's move ahead. Uh-oh, that's my dog. Fritz! Shh! Don't bark. So, what happens? Why do people migrate? How is urban life different from rural life? Okay, this is gonna kind of review a little bit that we got from questions 1 and 2, but let's do it. So, Grover Cleveland became the president in 1884. He was the governor of New York. He was a reformer. He was very honest. The Republicans nominated this guy named Blaine, and he was not very honest. One second. What is happening outside? I have to yell at my dog, guys. Sorry. Shh. Don't do this. Don't do that. Anyway, Cleveland won the election, okay? And he had a lot of his supporters that wanted him to give him a job. But he said no, he was kind of in the middle, okay? And soon it was economic issues that kind of took over this debate about patronage. Remember, patronage means that I'm going to give you a job just because I like you. So we have economic policy. People are starting to worry about the power of these large corporations because there was very, very little government regulation for these corporations. And small businesses and farmers, okay, were the ones that were very angry at the railroads. Why are they angry at the railroads? Because there was only one train. There was only one way to get their material from the center of the United States to the coast. So the trains can charge whatever price they want, okay? If you're the only person who is doing something, then you can charge whatever you want. So people protested, and they eventually were able to pass some laws to regulate the railroads. So here is one. In 1886, the Supreme Court ruled in the case of Wabash in the Pacific Railway, and it said that only the federal government could regulate interstate commerce. But the public pressured Congress to act, and Cleveland signed the Interstate Commerce Act, the ICC. Guys, this still exists today. So if I were you, I would put that in your notes. ICC, what is it? Okay, regulates interstate commerce. That's the ICC. It still exists. The ICC, Interstate Commerce Commission, created the ICC. Okay. So does that make sense? The ICC was able to regulate the railway, and it could tell the railway, look, it's not fair for you to charge these very crazy prices. And they were independent from the government. It was an independent regulatory agency, and it tried to control these railways and say, look, you cannot do what you're doing. It's illegal to charge higher rates. Okay. So the ICC was not very effective because it had to take railroads to court to prove they were violating the law and then ask the court to enforce the rulings. But there were some benefits. They banned rebates and higher rates for short hauls. It reduced some of the pressure on farmers and small businesses who were struggling. So here is one answer to this question. Number 6, okay? And it's the fact that the farmers could not compete with the railways. The railways charged a price that was too high for the farmers to be able to sell and transport their product. Okay, so that's one problem. And they couldn't compete with larger companies. Okay. But what a problem that these new laws did create is that the consumer had more costs, because now it meant that the cost of shipping goods increased for larger companies. Larger companies had to pay more because now they weren't charging the smaller companies more. So they passed these costs to the consumer. In 1893, Congress gave the ICC the power to regulate railroad safety as well, and the decision that brought its own costs and benefits. So safer railroads benefited passengers, but the cost of implementing railroad safety meant that the ticket prices went up. Tariffs were another economic issue. Many Democrats thought that Congress should cut tariffs because they raised the price of imported goods. Higher tariffs also forced other nations to respond in kind. So this becomes an issue all throughout American history. Even today, we're having tariff debates. A tariff is a tax on imported goods. Brazil has the same debate. Should we actually, Brazil has very high tariffs. That's why if you go to buy an iPhone in Brazil, it's very expensive. But if you buy an iPhone in America, it's usually, well, this is Brazil. Look at that. Almost 4,000 reais. But if I put here in dollars, it's $600 in iPhone 8. $600. I mean, if you multiply 6 times 5, you're gonna get about 3,000 reais because that's the current exchange rate. But look at that. That's 4,000. That's more, right? That's definitely more than the exchange rate. So why is it so expensive in Brazil? Because of the tariffs. That's why electronic goods are usually very expensive here in Brazil, even clothes. There's some clothes in America that you can buy for very cheap. Like if you just want to buy a t-shirt, prices. And you look at that, $20, 24. Okay, but look at the prices in Brazil, almost 100 reais. Oh my God, that's very, very expensive. So these are tariffs. Why does Brazil have these tariffs? Because they want to protect Brazilian products and they want people to buy Brazilian and not American. Problem is that people prefer to buy American or Japanese or Korean products because they're usually a little bit better. America is trying to do this now with Donald Trump. They have a better chance because America does have good products, so they can kind of compete. But it becomes complicated when it comes to food and things like that, okay? Or even cars, because there's a lot of foreign cars in America. Toyota, for example, is one of the number one cars in America, and it's not an American company. So anyway, in 88, the Republicans had their own presidential candidate. He got a lot of campaign contributions from industrialists who benefited from higher tariffs. So the Republicans are for higher tariffs. This is like Trump, okay? Whereas the Democrats were against higher tariffs. In 1890, Representative McKinley pushed through a bill that cut some taxes and tariff rates, but increased rates on other goods. His idea is to protect American industry from foreign competition. This is called protectionism. Protectionism, if you put that there. The theory or practice of shielding a country's industry from foreign competition by taxing imports. That's protectionism. So there you go. You got Uncle Sam, boom. And there's China's investments, and we're trying to build a wall. This is called protectionism, and you have a lot of different ways to look at that. Let me finish this page, and then I'll see if there are any questions. What actions did Congress take to reform the civil service, and why were the steps necessary? Well, many Americans thought that patronage created dishonesty in government and was inefficient. Okay, so this is reviewing the question number 6. But now we can get even more into the next question with what kinds of problems. We already found one problem is that they could not compete with big business. So now we're going to see some more problems that farmers faced. And this is when we get the beginnings of populism. Okay, what is populism? It's a movement, and it still exists today, right? Populism, to increase farmers' political power and work for legislation in their interest. But nowadays, populism is not just for farmers, it's also for the working class. Lula, the president here, was very populist. And even Bolsonaro is considered a populist president. So you don't have to be left wing or right wing to be a populist president. You just have to kind of talk to the regular people. Give me 1 second, guys, because I'm trying to see if anybody has left any messages on WhatsApp, and I can't because my internet is not going. Well, that's bizarre. Well, let's see. Let's see. It's in your emails. Henry, where are you? Enrique, we miss you. Henry Lins, let me see. Great. Sumaya, are you watching? There you go. I see that some people are paying attention, other people not so much. I can't see the chats. You are writing. Hello, Gabriel. Hello, Victor. Hi, Frenchy. Frenchy. Who is that? Anyway, are we all good? We're going to talk about farmers now. Farmers, farmers, farmers. So there was an economic crisis after the Civil War, and this led the farmers to join the populist movement. Why was there a crisis? Um, Mainly because people didn't have ways to transport goods, and they had spent so much money on the war. And new technology enabled farmers to produce more, but because there was more to produce, the prices fell. Okay, when you have more of something, it makes the prices go down. And higher tariffs also made it harder for farmers to sell their goods overseas. And the mortgages, remember, they didn't have a lot of money, so they had to get a loan from the bank that they needed to pay back, and they weren't always able to pay these loans back. So that answers a whole lot of problems that farmers had. Okay, so just to review, they didn't have money to pay the loans. The high tariffs made it difficult to sell overseas, and they were they had too much supplies, too many things to sell, and this made the prices go down. So what did they do? They thought about the money supply. After the Civil War, the government started issuing dollars in greenback, which is paper currency that could not be exchanged for gold or silver. But when the government starts to give out money like that, um, it only holds value because the government says that it does. And the more money that you have, the less the money is worth. And this causes inflation. Okay? Miss Summer probably teaches you about that. So if I just start to print money and give all of you money, the money doesn't have as much value because it's too much money. So after the United States ended, or the Civil War ended, the United States had three types of currency: greenback, which is dollars, okay, gold and silver coins, and national banknotes that were backed by government bonds. So to get inflation under control, the government stopped printing greenbacks and began to pay off its bonds. A bond is like a mini investment that you can give to the government. You pay the government some money, and then later you can get this money back. And the money that you pay to the government uses for different projects, but then it has to pay you the money back. So what does this mean? That we do not have that much money in circulation with the economy. So as the economy got bigger, deflation, an increase in the value of money, and decrease in prices began. Okay? because now we don't have that much money in circulation, so the money is worth too much, but the value of things is too little, so deflation can be as bad as inflation. And deflation hit the farmers really hard because it means that they sold their crops for less and then had to borrow money for seed and other supplies for their next crops. And with money in short supply, interest rates began to rise. That means that the more they owed to the bank, the more they had to pay back. Okay, that's an interest rate. So if I give Vitor 2 reais, I say, okay, but Victor, next month you need to give me 2 reais and 50 cents. That's interest. But if I'm really, really crazy, I can make the interest rate really high. So now I say, Victor, you have to pay me $1 for every dollar that I give you. So if I give Victor $2, next month he needs to pay me $3. Okay? So you see how this can be very complicated because he's always going to owe money to the bank. So this answers some of these questions here of what problems did the farmers face. So they couldn't sell their goods, could not sell their goods. They suffered from inflation and deflation. They suffered from owing the banks, right? They suffered from not being able to compete. They suffered from tariffs. They were just having big problems all around, all over. It was bad news bears for the farmers. Let's continue. So the Grange takes action. So in 1866, the Department of Agriculture sent Oliver Keeley to tour the rural South and report on their conditions. So he realized, hey, these farmers are very much isolated. We need to have a national organization to help them, which is the Patrons of Husbandry. Husbandry is working with farming and things like that. And it also became known as the Grange. And the Grange was there to help these farmers. It pressured states to regulate the railroad, warehouse rates, reduce competition among farmers. It also created organizations called cooperatives in which farmers work together to increase prices and lower costs. But none of these strategies improved the farmers' economic conditions. So the Grange began to fall apart. And instead, we got the Farmers Alliance, which had between 1.5 and 3 million members. When Charles W. Macouney became the leader of the alliance, he announced a plan to organize a very large cooperative to exchange ideas. And again, it didn't succeed because it was too much. They wanted to do too much, and railroad companies, bankers, and all these people made it very difficult for them to stay in business. So it's hard to compete against these very large corporations. And here there's a question. What measures did the nation take after the Civil War? Well, it didn't print as many greenbacks, it began to repay the bonds, and it stopped making coins out of silver, but this created deflation. So we start to get the rise of populism. What were the goals of the People's Party? Many people were dissatisfied, okay? And the only way to achieve their goals would be through politics. But they didn't trust the Republicans or the Democrats. They believed that both of these parties worked with the bankers more than the farmers. So we have a meeting of 1,000 delegates in Nebraska, and they form the People's Party, okay? And they had their first national convention to try to nominate a president, the People's Party, Nebraska. And you have here the people that were there to try to become more powerful through politics. There he is. That's a nice picture. Okay, there it is. William Jennings Bryan. He's going to be important. So what did they believe in? Okay, one, they nominated James Weaver to run for president. And what did they want? Unlimited coinage of silver and federal ownership of railroads and graduated income tax. These are the three things that they wanted. So again, before silver was used for money, they wanted, or to back money, they wanted silver back. They wanted the government to own the railroads, not private companies. And a graduated income tax is when the taxes that you pay depend on how much money that you make. Graduated income tax. So there you have. If you make 10,000, then you pay $500. If you're between that, you pay about $500 of taxes. If you're between 30 and 70,000, 2,500, and it goes on and on and on and on and on. And this is what a progressive income tax looks like. So if you don't make too much money, you don't pay so many taxes. If you're in the middle, you pay a little bit more. If you're very rich, you pay a lot of taxes. So the Grangers were into this idea. And they adopted proposals that were designed to appeal to labor, okay, such as an 8-hour workday, immigration restrictions. And these ideas, these populist ideas, eventually made sense for urban workers or voters. So or held little appeal to urban voters because they didn't see how this was going to help them. This is more for rural America. So many of them continued to vote for Democrats, whose candidate was Grover Cleveland, and he won the election. Okay. Why did Southern Alliance groups resist the idea of a National People's Party? Because the Democratic Party would lose its influence in the South. Let's see if we have any questions so far. All right. I see some people are still here. I hope you're paying attention. By the way, Thursday we have class. If we don't have a chance to do the assignments today, we will do them on Thursday. But I think we're going to finish this chapter. I'm going slowly because it's a lot of information. But if you have any questions, just write them in the chat box or on WhatsApp. Is that cool? Let me see if there are any questions in the WhatsApp group. Sumaya, are you watching? That's a good question. I don't know. Why did the populists support the Democratic candidate? William Jennings Bryan. Remember this guy, okay? So why did they actually support him? Well, one is what's going on at the time. The Republicans, they would endorse the gold standard, and they actually expected the Democrats to nominate Grover Cleveland, even though Cleveland favored the gold standard. The People's Party hoped that when it endorsed silver, pro silver Democrats would choose the populist, but it did not happen. So William Jennings Bryan gave a really strong speech on silver at the convention and won the Democratic nomination. And there we have a picture of him, Williams Bryan. And you can have a little bit of his speech. So the populists faced a difficult choice. They could endorse Bryan and risk undermining their identity, or nominate their own candidate and risk splitting the silver vote. But they chose to support Bryan. The Republicans, they appealed to workers with the promise that they would provide a full dinner pail, means they would be able to get the economy working. And of course, business leaders supported the Republicans because they thought that the silver would ruin the country's economy. Many employers thought that if Bryan won, business would fail and unemployment would rise. And McKinley's reputation as a moderate on labor issues and tolerant to ethnic groups helped improve the Republican image with urban workers and immigrants. So McKinley won the victory. After this, the People's Party declined. The populist goal of using federal government to ease economic hardship failed because the party wasn't able to really appeal to urban workers in the Northeast. But these ideas were not forgotten, and they still influence political debate today. Um, in fact, the reason that we have an 8-hour workday, restrictions on immigration, graduated income tax, these are programs that exist and are still debated. And uh, and also, it says here that ironically, the key populist goal of increasing the money supply came about almost immediately following the election, as gold from the Klondike and new gold mines in South Africa flooded the world economy. So here's the last page, the Klondike Gold Rush. They were able to find gold in Alaska, in the Yukon Territory, which was in northern Canada. So when this happened, 100,000 people went to the Klondike to get rich. It was very difficult to get there. It's very far away, but it became part of uh, the history of the country. Okay, just in the same way that people started moving west to find all these other minerals, people moved to the north in order to get gold and other things like that. And prospectors who went there, they had to bring a year's worth of supplies so that nobody starved to death in the remote region. So everybody had to bring a ton of materials. New boom towns and hotels and saloons were created. Prices soared as merchants bought tools, food, and shelter. Hundreds died, some from starvation, other from avalanches while climbing. And eventually the gold rush ended. Although companies using heavy equipment continued to expand gold production, fewer than 40,000 people made it to the gold fields, and only about 4,000 found gold. Okay? And only a few hundred became wealthy. The gold rush helped develop lower Alaska. It also poured millions of dollars into the US economy. So if you ever want to study the gold rush, there's a lot of videos on it. but there's this great movie by Charlie Chaplin called The Gold Rush. Well, that's California. We want Alaska. And there's a show on Discovery about it. Here's some picture of people going up into the mountains to find gold. And it was not easy, guys. It was not easy. And like I said, many people died. And you can see here the trail that people would take in order to get up there. And it's the reason why Alaska eventually became a state, because people did move up there and some stayed. There's a lot of mosquitoes in Alaska, though. So here's the review. Why was civil service reform needed? Many people thought that patronage was inefficient and corrupt. What kind of problems did farmers face? We had depression, deflation, falling crop prices. Let's move ahead to the final lesson in chapter 4. This is a long chapter, guys. Let's see, not too many pages. How did African Americans resist racism and try to improve their way of life after Reconstruction? I believe that's going to answer question number 8. Let's pay attention here and see what is the reason for this. So after Reconstruction, remember, Reconstruction is when, after the Civil War, they tried to rebuild the South. But a lot of people that had farms um, couldn't own the farms anymore. They had no money. They went into debt. A lot of black people that were slaves eventually had to go to the north or to the west, but most of them went to the north. So there was a mass migration. 6,000 African Americans left their home and went to Kansas. Some people said it was like the Exodus. Um, other black people just stayed in the South and joined poor white farmers with the Farmers Alliance, and they even asked blacks to form their own alliance, and they created the Colored Farmers National Alliance. And a lot of blacks joined this organization. If poor whites joined African Americans in voting for the populists, the coalition would be unbeatable. So the Democratic Party of the South, which was very racist, did not like this. So to win back the poor white vote, the Democrats began appealing to racism. And they started creating a lot of laws which were against blacks in the South. Okay? So it's very interesting that in the South, blacks and poor whites were kind of treated badly. Both of them were treated very badly compared to rich white people. So the Democratic Party had to find a way to attract these poor white people and have them against the blacks. So they began to really appeal to racism and try to make the poor white people not be together with the black people, so that they would have less votes for the People's Party. Okay? So they passed a lot of laws that would impose segregation and deny blacks their voting rights. So how would they do this? Taking away the vote. Well, the 15th Amendment prohibits states from denying votes based on race, color, or previous condition of servitude, but it does not bar states from denying these rights on other grounds. So they started to impose other restrictions that did not mention a race, but made it impossible for blacks to vote. For example, they started to require a voting tax, okay? $2, which back then was a lot. Imagine it would be like 20 reais or 30 reais today. So imagine you are a poor person or a black person, and sometimes the same, and to vote for the president, you have to pay 30 reais or more. Man, a lot of people are not going to vote. 30 reais is a lot for poor people, people that live in the suburbs. So this makes them vote less. Also, Mississippi said that they had to take a test to read. So again, you guys go to a very good school, but a lot of poor people go to not so good schools, right? Some of the public schools are not very bad and they can't read. All right. I was talking to somebody the other day and I was sending messages on WhatsApp and he said, "Can you send audio? Because I can't read." Hey, it happens. He lives in a very poor region of the west of Brazil. So, of course, he would not be able to pass a test and vote. And um, what else would they do? Basically, that it was testing, testing, testing. Sometimes they would test how much they knew about the local constitution. Um, And also, to let more whites vote, Louisiana introduced the grandfather clause. This allowed any man to vote if he had an ancestor who could vote in 1867. So, what does that mean? Black people were not allowed to vote before 1867, so they were not allowed to vote, okay? There are still some things that America does today to keep black people and poor people from voting. And one of them is requiring blacks to go in with an ID, a driver's license. Because in America, we don't have the ID like you do in Brazil. So if I'm poor, I don't have a driver's license, okay? And that's my only identification. That means I cannot vote. Legalizing segregation. Okay, there was discrimination in the North, but there was actual segregation in the South, and we're going to talk about what that means. These laws were called the Jim Crow laws, which said that it could keep people out of public places on the basis of race and barred racial discrimination in selecting jurors. Uh, but the Supreme Court said that no state could deny citizens equal protection under the law. Private organizations, hotels, theaters, railroads could practice segregation. So, what does that mean? They tried to make it illegal everywhere for blacks and whites to be apart, but the government said, hey, in public places, we can't do this. But private places, yes. So if a restaurant only wants to serve black people or white people, then it can do that. And that's where we have Jim Crow. You should put this in your notes. The Jim Crow laws, and that's where we have things like this, where white people can only drink from one, black people can only drink from the other, or you have a job, help wanted, whites only. Okay, we wash for white people only. You have the colored waiting room. So everything was separate but equal. Okay, which we're going to get to in a second. So, encouraged by the Supreme Court's ruling and by the decline of congressional support for civil rights, Southern states passed a series of laws establishing segregation in virtually all public places. Southern whites and African Americans could no longer ride together in the same railroad cars or drink from the same water fountains. And this is what we call Plessy versus Ferguson. Okay. Um, and they argued that this doctrine was separate but equal, which means, hey, we're treating you equally under the Constitution. We just prefer that you are separate. Okay? Does that make sense? By the way, this is giving you a lot of answers to this questions. How did African Americans resist racism? Here we're getting all of the racism. So how did they respond? Okay. The African American community responded to violence and discrimination in a lot of ways with a lot of different approaches. Okay. First, let's get to Ida B. Wells. There she is. She was a black woman from Tennessee, okay, that settled in Chicago, and she was against lynching. Lynching is when you hang black people from trees. She published a book denouncing violence and demanding a fair trial. Congress rejected the anti-lynching bill, and the number of lynching decreased significantly in 1900, due in part to the efforts of activists such as Wells. So one way that they responded was through education, telling people, hey, this is bad. You should not hang people from trees. One lynching victim who had been a close friend of Mary Church Terrell. She was a college-educated woman born during the Civil War. And at that time, President Harrison refused to condemn lynching. It began Terrell on her lifelong battle against lynching, racism, and sexism. She worked with women's suffrage, which is giving the women right to vote. So again, this is more protesting, campaigning, educating the public. Boycotts against department stores was another thing that they did. Okay? That means don't buy from these places that are not going to treat people the same. Calls for compromise. We have Booker T. Washington. He said, hey, we're not going to stop white people from being racist to us, so let's form our own groups. Let's keep our economic goals together, okay, rather than political ones, because we're not going to be able to change the politics. So let's buy from each other. Let's try to live with each other. Let's educate ourselves. Let's learn a trade and just forget these white people that want to just treat us badly. And by the way, guys, it's not all white people, obviously, right? It's just a lot of the politicians at the time, especially in the South. And then Du Bois rejects this compromise. Okay, so W.B. Du Bois was against this. He said that, hey, there's no advantage to giving up civil rights. Okay, his idea is that, yes, we need to be educated, but we need to have civil rights also. Okay, we need to have civil rights also, and to vote and all of these things. So guys, that ends this section. So, a way that blacks resisted racism is that they created their own versions of the Farmers Alliance, they protested, they boycotted. These are a bunch of little things that they did. What laws did the southern states pass to impose segregation? Well, we saw that, right? I'm going to help you a little bit with that one. Jim Crow, but give examples. Give examples of what Jim Crow were. And what are the different ways African American community leaders responded to legalized segregation? So, in fact, here, these two questions are a little confusing. Number 8 is a little bit before. That's when blacks just moved. Remember? They just left the South. Some went west, some went north. And then number 10 is what we just read now about the different women and men who created organizations. They wrote books. They formed coalitions in order to educate people, in order to support blacks during this time. So look at that, people. You should by now have all your questions answered for this unit, which I believe is chapters 3 and 4. You should have notes for chapter 4. You should have notes for chapter 3. So what do you do now? What do you do? You go to Blackboard. Okay, so I hope you're paying attention. In the next class that we're having is just for assignments. Unit 3. So we answered all these questions. We already did this one, chapter 4. So remember, you have to do lesson 1 and lesson 2. So this one are the required notes. You have to do this. Remember, save that as a PDF. What pushed immigrants into America? What pulled immigrants into America? We studied that. Lesson 2. You have to do this one. Okay, this is one you have to do. What were some of the urban problems? Remember to write. You just press the little T and write. You can erase if you made a mistake. Don't forget to put your name, put the date, save as a PDF. And then if you did not write your own notes, then you have to do these. You have to do lesson 3. Where you have this one, you have the different movements and what were their main ideas. You have to do lesson 4. Again, this is if you did not write your own notes. You don't have to do it if you wrote your own notes. Politics of the Gilded Age. So you have to write a little outline of the things that happens. Lesson 5. What do they want here? Forms of discrimination. So guys, you can do that. I think it's more work. It's up to you. I think it's smarter to write your own notes. How long should your notes be? I would write a page. So if you go here, I would have at least a page of notes. At least, minimum, okay? In your notebook, maybe 2 pages. But it's up to you. The big issue is, like I was talking to Jaza, is that you guys are not doing anything. If you look here, you see, nobody's handing in their work. If I go on my grades, let's see if this student, oh, there you go, better. Somebody sent in their work. This is nice. Look at that. Somebody did their quizzes. So this is good. This is good. Okay. Because I can see everybody. I can see everybody's assignments on here, guys. I can see everybody's assignments on here. So we are always checking to see who is doing what. I'm trying to, oh, there it is. Yeah, so I can go here on the parent dashboard and I can go under somebody's name. So that was Sumaya. So thank you, Sumaya. But if I want to check Mateus, I can go right there and let's see if Mateus is doing his work. Oh, well, he did some. It's better than before, but we got to catch up, little Mateus, okay? Because we are right here. We just finished this, okay? So there's a lot of quizzes, guys. So next Thursday, or not next Thursday, this Thursday, I'm going to be online just to help you do your assignments. Analyze historical documents. Let's take a look at that real quick. We have time. Let me go to units. Look, guys, I'm going to give you the short way to do this assignment, okay? Remember you had this document analysis worksheet? What does this do? It helps you organize, okay? It helps you organize. And you have all the types of documents and everything. I hope you did this because it'll help you organize the information that you need. List 3 things the author said that are important. Why do you think this document was written? And what documents are we talking about? For each of the following documents. So you need to do one of those for each one of them. The Declaration, the Constitution, or the Bill of Rights. There's the Bill of Rights right there. Be sure you have located these documents in your textbook and in online resources. Okay, cool. So write up a document analysis summary and submit it below. Using your notes from the worksheet, analyze the meaning of these 3 founding documents. Include how the principles outlined in the documents have been applied. So what does that mean? You're going to write one document, okay? So you don't need to send this. This is to help you organize. You don't have to send this. What you're going to do is you're going to write a little paragraph similar to this right here. See, this one writes about the Constitution. It's a handwritten congressional record made on September 17th, 1787. It was not just a single person that created it. You're going to write a little paragraph about it. And you see how down here it has the Bill of Rights. Okay? So that means 3 paragraphs, one about each one of these documents. Okay? This is a long assignment. It's the first one. So I understand why a lot of you didn't send it yet, because it's long, it's boring, and it was the first assignment, so it maybe was a little bit confusing for you guys. But you have to write 3 paragraphs about each document. Okay? one paragraph about the Constitution, one paragraph about the Declaration of Independence, and one paragraph about the Bill of Rights. These are your 3 paragraphs, okay? And you're going to use the information that you got from that worksheet to write your paragraphs. Now, if you can do these paragraphs without using the worksheet, hooray, do it. But you have to send this, okay? You have to send this one because we are way past lesson 1, chapter 1, however you want to call it. All right, so you need to send this. Cool. The worksheet is just to help you organize, but if you can do it without the worksheet, awesome. And don't forget to include the vocabulary. Don't include vocabulary. Vocabulary. Sorry about that. And what is the vocabulary? It's on Blackboard in that unit 1. And there it is. Preamble. Remember the preamble to the Constitution? Natural rights. I think that's involving the Declaration. Grievances is in the Declaration. Principles of the Constitution. Bill of Rights, of course, is part of the Bill of Rights, also the Declaration. Amendments, where do I find amendments? In the Bill of Rights, the Constitution, or the Declaration of Independence? So use this vocabulary to write your paragraph about this document. And the easy way to organize it in your head is answer the who. Who wrote it? What is it? Where did they write it? When did they write it? Why did they write it? And of course, how did they write it? Okay? So if you have a problem figuring out how to organize something, just answer the 5 W's and how. So maybe I want to begin with what? The Declaration of Independence officially declares independence from England. It was written by it was written in America in blah 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 blah. When in 1776. They wrote the Declaration because and they worked together. So how did they write? So if you follow who, what, where, when, why, it doesn't always have to be in this order, especially because we're talking about a document. So maybe you want to begin with what, way to kind of organize your paragraph. Cool, Mateus, and cool, Mayada. I see 2 okays. That makes me happy. So let's try to do this. And on Thursday, I will see you guys, and we are going to just do assignments. We are not moving ahead in the book. I want you guys to come to class prepared for questions on assignments. What? Gabriel Souza, 2. What is 2, my friend? What is 2? To you too, my friend. To you too. Three okay. Oh, I didn't see. You gave me an okay in the top. I'm sorry, my man. Okay, so three okays. Now I understand. I didn't see your first okay. I'm glad everybody is here, guys, and you were paying attention. It's a lot of information. If you have to go back and watch the video again, do it. And you can fast forward to the parts where you see that we're actually looking at the journal questions and things like that. Okay? Sometimes you have to do that. All right, little men and little women, we are about finished. You have another class, I think, with, oh, I don't want to say, so I don't give you wrong information. But look for either Miss Summer or Mr. Gibson. Okay? See you guys. I'll see you on Thursday. Thursday, we have class at 4:30, not 2:45, 4:30. And if you have any quiz questions too, okay, I'll be there to answer everything.